Welcome back, everybody. Canada's daytime sports talk show continues, and I was saying that we got a lot of things to get to with Arash. This Oakland to Montreal rumors coming up in Major League Baseball, and Wayne in Victoria, BC says, wasn't it in Oakland where the World Series was stopped by an earthquake in the late 1980s? That was in San Francisco, I believe, and Arash can clarify if I'm wrong. You were 2 years old, but I was in Ottawa on an exchange program. Please put Arash on my screen. I'll never forget Arash if you're old enough. Al Michaels, we're having an earthquake. Remember that? And the screen went black. Were you watching that game?
I was, and I think Michaels' call was something like, I'm not sure if we're on the air right now, and I don't know if I care.
That's right.
But Michaels actually turned into a news reporter because back in the day, he had been the Giants play-by-play voice. So at the time, the World Series was on ABC. As the helicopters and the overhead shots kind of went across the city, it was the World Series, the Bay Area World Series, Giants Athletics. But basically, Michaels was explaining what you're looking at, what this highway is, how that's connected to the Bay Bridge that disintegrated. I remember it well, Rod.
Remember that? How that bridge went down? I remember it like it was yesterday. And I was with 25 other kids in Ottawa on an exchange program, Encounters with Canada, watching it in high school. We're having an earthquake. Anyways, let's start there. A's moving to Montreal. What do you think? Or is it just a ploy?
Well, a few things. Let's just start with Oakland first. Today's the 2-year anniversary of the Kawhi shot, Roddy. The ballpark in Oakland, which was also a football stadium, is basically connected to the basketball arena. So when you walk in through the loading dock there, through the players' parking lot, if you took a right, you would go into Oracle Arena. And if you took a left, you'd go into the ballpark/stadium. Well, now the Raiders are in Las Vegas. The basketball team is in downtown San Francisco. They're right beside where the Giants play. And now there's talk of the baseball team moving, which would mean Oakland has gone from 3 sports franchises all of 2 years ago to potentially 0 down the road. Now, miles to go before we sleep on the baseball front. But a lot of this, as we've come to understand with pro sports and relocation, is a leverage negotiation play and ploy. There's been more talk down the road of having a split with Tampa and Montreal, the Rays, Expos, whatever you want to call that. To me, this is a way that Major League Baseball, the owners of the Athletics, are going to try and get more money out of the taxpayers of Oakland and Alameda counties to keep a pro sports franchise there after they've just lost 2.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. I wasn't aware of too much of this, obviously. Now, man, you really stirred it up on that XFL Markcast, and I'm trying to sort out where you are on the XFL as a league. I saw the moldy sweaters and used helmets and that comment, right? And Richard Petty got involved, for the love of Pete. How do you feel about the XFL? How do you feel about the merger? I've never really asked you how you'd like to see this unfold.
My concern, Rod, is that the people now running the teams and the league office are fine with removing the C from the Canadian Football League. They're fine with the Canadian part of it being out the window. That if you said to them, we are going to have a 100-yard field and it's not going to be as wide as it is now, they'd be okay with it. I'm led to believe that there is little appetite for having much of a ratio, let alone any kind of ratio, moving forward to mandate Canadian players being involved. And doing all this with the hope and thought that maybe a spring league is going to operate. They're willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater, all on hope. And they keep saying, well, the league's in trouble in Toronto and Montreal and BC. You've done this. You've done this to yourselves. There was a local Quebec-based business conglomerate with Eric Lapointe as the face of it that wanted to come buy the Alouettes when the Wettenhall threw the keys on the door. What'd you do as a league? Yeah, a couple Toronto businessmen who went to a Grey Cup party ended up getting a chance to do it. So I just wonder, Rod, I don't know about you, what if the league had good leadership? what would become of the CFL then? Something that I've continued to wonder for quite some time, as the years go on and as the eras go on.
Well, just, on that, I thought the Schooner should have been granted a franchise myself in 2019. You're from out there, playing in Moncton, and maybe it would have spurred on a new stadium. Was that barking up the wrong tree from the jump? God, to me, that's been botched.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say it's been botched. I think it'd be a totally different conversation if not for COVID. I think they were kind of going down that road and going through the processes of it, and there was legitimate legs to it, and then COVID hit, and then, from an economic standpoint, how do you justify using public funds on a stadium or a pro sports franchise when there's so much more to do? But this whole notion that, the CFL is dead in Montreal, I don't buy that at all. Man, I lived there, and granted, it was a while ago, but I lived there from 02 to 04. At the time, the Alouettes were so hot with Calvillo and Cahoon and winning championships, and they were lighting up the scoreboard, and the place was sold out. It was harder to get an Alouettes ticket than a Habs ticket. 250,000 people showed up to the parade. I think the Alouettes work, and I like what Danny Machocha is doing from the Canadian standpoint of almost every Canadian transaction they've had is a French-Canadian kid. And people in Quebec support their own. They want to rally behind, the players who went to school at Laval and Montreal and Sherbrooke as a complement to what they're doing. So, Roddy, you and I have talked about this before. The league continues to look just for like a magic bullet, a vaccine, something to just solve all of its problems. And now the latest thing is The Rock and the XFL. And what is that? What really is that? And how invested and committed are they into it long term? And the answer to that, Rod, is that nobody can really answer it because nobody really knows. And it's a massive risk to take. And you're throwing 100 years of history up in the air with hope that this is going to work out. And I just don't think that what history has shown us is that spring football doesn't work.
Well, I'm glad I asked the question. So you just explained it. What the XFL is a bunch of moldy jerseys and used helmets, whatever. That's what you're saying. It's not a big business right now, right? And so it's kind of a flimsy plan to save the CFL. Now, from a viewer, Don Mitchell says, we have embraced our Canadian way. Rod keeps saying the CFL is not the NFL. Then why should we try to be like them? His question's to you, Arash. Why would we lose the Canadiana? Why would they do it?
Because they think that if we team up and make it let's just say an 18-team league, we're going to get a pile of broadcast money, a pile of TV money, and that's going to put a lot of money in our pockets. And that's the way this is going to go. That's the thought. I don't know. Roddy, you live in a CFL market. I live in Toronto, so I don't live in a CFL market. But you live in a true CFL market. Is there interest in the Seattle, whatever their names are, the Memphis, whatever their names are, rolling in there? When I was doing that XFL, I'm like, who'd name me a quarterback in your league? They're like Josh Johnson. The Josh Johnson-led Seattles roll into Regina with no Canadian players. I don't know, man. Is that of interest to you?
What I hear is it's a split. Some say I'll watch the Riders no matter what league they're in, and I hear that from Bomber fans too. The others are very dead set against losing the CFL of what it is, and I see people in the league don't want anything to change. I'm hearing that from a lot of markets, and I'm sure you do too, because we talk to a lot of the same people. Not everybody feels the same way. They just want football back. And I was in the park in 1993 when David Archer and the Sacramento Gold Miners came in here, set an attendance record, and it was a riot. I didn't care. I was a Rider fan back then, right? I'm buying tickets.
Well, I'll tell you this, Rod. I think if you gave Randy Ambrosie some truth serum, based on the conversations I've been having, if you gave Randy Ambrosie some truth serum, or if you gave some governors in the league some truth serum, because these days it doesn't seem like anybody knows what the truth is anymore, or they don't want to spew it, and they'll tell you that the truth is a lie. And say, do you believe in the ratio, and do you want the ratio to stay in this league? The answer will be no.
I've heard the same thing, so I know where you're coming from. You're not stirring it up, right? You're spewing facts. Hey,
truth.
Truth. Yeah, truth. From Gregory Lee. Hey, Arash, what is it like interviewing Conor McGregor? I think we asked you that before, but we'll ask you again. That must have been not weird, but have you done? Was it like all your other interviews?
You know what? It was really interesting because that happened it was the Monday morning after NFL playoff weekend, and I was up to like 3 or 4 doing prep for it. That man is a marketing machine, Rod. I mean, he is just hit play and go, and away he goes. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to ask him, basically have a conversation with him as an athlete, not as an MMA fighter. Conor, you've done all of this in your career. Well, what's next? What motivates you to get out of bed? What is it that about competition? So I wanted to come at him, but kind of asking him the same types of questions I would ask someone like Roger Federer at the tail end of his career. I've been lucky enough doing Rogers Cup to have sit downs with him and Nadal, talking to some of the guys in the twilight of their career. What now? What next? Why is it you're still out there competing? And that was the interesting part, because so often people get caught up in the storylines and the fight and whatever. They don't talk about the legacy part. They don't talk about the motivation part. And that was interesting to get out of McGregor.
Well, I'll say this, man. Like, I've interviewed quite a few MMA people. I've announced a lot of combat sports. Different from boxing, MMA, like their eyes are like wild animals. Mm-hmm. I swear to God. This was in the cage when I interviewed them. Yours was not, right? It was a sit down. Yeah, was he nice?
I mean, he's a brand, Rod. He's a slick brand. He knew he was speaking to a national audience in Canada where there were going to be pay-per-view buys, and they were looking for pay-per-view buys. The only difference here is that I now have myself a Bishop's University helmet. Mm-hmm. So thanks to my pals over at the alma mater, my Mighty Gators. I didn't have that for the McGregor interview. So the Vikes helmet's it's gone down a notch.
I was going to say it depends on where they are in your heart on that day. You and my friend Cameron Hughes, Cameron Cheers, the professional fan, both proud Bishop's alum, as you know. Hey, lastly, how about those Toronto Blue Jays? As we said at the start, going in, they may or may not contend, but damn, they're fun. They're fun.
It's interesting when you bring a young team together and you kind of watch this rise of these kids who came up in the minor leagues together, Bichette, Biggio, Guerrero, and you just kind of watch. We're watching it all unfold. Vlad's 22 and Bo's 23 and Biggio's 26, and you see the growing pains and you see the ups and downs. And then you see an 8th inning like last night where they just came at you in so many different ways. And a 1-run deficit turned into like a 3-run lead. And the one thing about him is, Roddy, they're the closest thing to appointment TV these days, because you really never know what you're going to get when you watch them. And they can come at you in so many different ways. And I was texting somebody last night and I just said, Vlad comes up, bases loaded. And I'm like, Vladimir Guerrero is turning into a mature professional hitter. It's not just about hitting the ball 10,000 miles an hour, even though it jumps off his bat. He understood last night with the bases loaded in a tight game, a single the other way is just as vital, and he can hit all fields. So it's really interesting. We saw the infancy, we saw the struggles, we continue to see some growing pains. And then there's actually something on the other side of it, and we're starting to see glimpses of what could be down the road.
It's the way it's supposed to be. More often than not, it is good when we turn our TV on. 5:20 Mountain tonight, Blue Jays at Atlanta. We'll be watching, as you say, appointment viewing. Sir, thank you for the visit. As always, keep in touch. Great job. Peace out.
Thanks, Roddy.
Sportsnet's Arash Madani checking in from the Big Smoke.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.